Good morning, everybody. This is Diggs. It's another beautiful day out here in the Pacific Northwest. We are seeing record flooding right now, so thank you everybody that reached out to me to ask if I was okay. We are close to where the floods are happening. The floods are actually happening like a mile or two away from my house, but we are actually just fine. The water will not reach us. We actually live up on just a little bit of a hill, so we are relatively safe from it. Today we're going to be talking about Farm, specifically how she is the last unit, at least so far on the JP side, that's been added to the general pool of units. We're going to talk about what that means for global and some things to think about and whether or not we should be maybe changing our strategies going forward, pulling and planning for units. Let's go ahead and dig in. From here on out, every single unit is going to be a limited time unit, with the exception of units that are given to us or units that are given to us via select quest. Now, some people might be wondering how many units are going to be given to us, what units are going to be, select quest accessible. So we are going to have Rafale, we're going to have Lucio, Thancred, Prompto, Locke, Raychess, and Minwu. That's a lot of, quote unquote free units over the next couple of months. And I'm wondering if for you out there, does this offset the fact that there are no more new units being added to the general pool? My other question would be, given that the Warriors of Crystal are limited time, very similar to how global exclusive units are limited time, where you kind of have access to pull for the other ones when the banner returns. You have access to, let's say you skip Joom and then you pull on the Setia banner, you're going to have an opportunity to get Joom. Very similar to how if you skip Dwayne and you pull on a Fryevia banner, you're going to have access to get Dwayne, right? Do you feel like that is something you should consider limited? I know a lot of people are really excited for the Crystal Warrior units. I know a lot of people want Joom in particular. I'm more of a Setia man myself. I would say a little bit more class over here on this side. But are you okay with limited time banners that return more often? And I personally am just fine with it. I would not view, for example, the Crystal Warriors as limited time units because their banner is coming back so frequently and you have an opportunity to get these other units on a regular basis. Very similar to how I would not consider Starlight Elena a limited time unit because we know that you're going to get 4 or 5 times a year to have an opportunity to pull her alongside with Dwayne or Fryevia. That's kind of what I think about. And I think about also diluting the pool, right? If you look at all of the kind of general units that we have right now, what tends to be happening, at least on the JP side now, is we're seeing buffs to these other units. It's almost like a fighting game or an MMO, it feels like, where we are getting buffs to older characters to make them relevant so that the investment that we made on these characters is not fully wasted. And it's a really interesting way to look and think about it and kind of see the idea of a gacha game buffing older units to make them more relevant, because a lot of the times what you see is Brave Exvius, for example, you just received a 7-star version of a new unit or a new Neovision version of the new unit, and the old unit is gone. Like any money that you spend on that unit, any sort of horizontal progression that the game might have offered will have been completely destroyed, right? Because it's all vertical progression. So I wonder, I'm really curious because I'm not upset about this because, of course, there's multiple factors, but one, I feel like with the Crystal Warriors coming out, I'm going to have, quite a few options to pull for the Crystal Warriors if I want. I feel like I could skip one and it would not be the end of the world. I look at the other limited time units coming out like Golbez. I think about, Noctis from Final Fantasy 15, Aranea, and I'm like, okay, they seem reasonably spaced out, right? You can see here that the space between Noctis and Golbez, what I would consider actual limited time units, right? Because you're only going to be able to pull them on the collaboration banner. I would say, it's actually pretty far. If you're considering, Aranea is going to be a week, Lucio and Summer Elsewhere, it's at least, 4 or 5 weeks apart. That's a reasonable distance for kind of a fest unit to be kind of spread around. And then you have, another, 4 or 5 weeks later, you have Locke and Terra, which is kind of what we've seen on the global side and what we've had for a long time. So I'm not too concerned about this, actually. And I think, for a long time now, especially since they added the 40k pity, a lot of people have been, instead of just pulling on every banner or pulling on a whim, they are strategically planning on what units to pull for, or they are planning for a very specific element. And I think the fact of that element being limited or not doesn't really affect them. I think what affects them more is when we have units that come out on the global side that they are not expecting, right? So that would be like Christmas units, like brand new Christmas units this year. Like what if you're building a water composition, you're saving, I don't know, what's a better example? Your fire composition, you're saving for Setia, because Setia is of course going to be, incredible for fire compositions. And then all of a sudden a fire Christmas unit comes out and you're like, oh shit, what do I do? Right? I think that's more disruptive to the plans than staying true and saving up, right? So overall, I don't think having limited or semi-limited banners is actually a bad thing. And I think, we on the global side tend to drama it up. We tend to say it is bad, it's terrible, but I don't think it is at this point. And I think one of the things that also factors into all of this is the idea of the amount of money that I spend on this game. And a lot of people go, well, Diggs, you're a whale, you're a kraken, you spend so much money on this game. And the reality is, and you've probably, if you've been on my stream, heard me talk about it, the amount of money that I've spent on this game has decreased significantly since the very beginning of the game. I used to spend quite often $1,000 a month, maybe even more on pulling, and I would spend, Ildira, if you think about Ildira, how much Visior? At least 80,000. I spent at least 80,000 Visior chasing Ildira, right? If you think about now, where I have a 40,000 guaranteed pity, where I have kind of other advantageous options to pull, the amount of money that I've been spending on the game is significantly lower than what it was previously. And I think you are not going to be forced to spend more money because there's more limited banners releasing. I think with the implementation of pity, and if you are a responsible and reasonable spender, you're actually probably, like me, spending less money on the game now than you were previously. And that's another thing I would be interested to hear from, because I know a lot of my audience, is a lot of people who participate in top tier guild battles. There are a lot of people who do spend money on the game, and everything that I've heard is that people are spending less, not because they don't want to, but because they don't have to. And that's an interesting thing to think about, that we used to have to spend much more money on this game, and now we don't have to. And so I think that's a huge factor into sort of this transition to limited and semi-limited or banner event, like Crystal Warrior banner event summons. And I think that's something that should not be thought about, should not be not thought about. And I think it's also very relevant to a lot of people that play this game, is considering the amount of money that they spend to get a unit, right? I would say if you wanted to get a unit, you would probably have to spend significantly less. Previously, you probably would have had to have spent $300 to $400. You could probably pull a unit you want now with about $100 to $120. I would say if you're planning your purchasing outright, if you're doing it slow and steady, if you're making all the right purchases, if you're waiting for the deals, I think that's absolutely possible. And I don't know, it's just something that I think about in terms of the long run of the game. And it's also something that I get concerned about when I look at things like Chaos Odin coming out in the future, right? So we might not be getting, might not be getting units added to the general pool, but all of a sudden now Chaos Odin's here. He's a 100 cost vision card, and he's essentially quadruple the cost of a normal vision card, right? That's the type of stuff that scares me more than looking at these, you know, limited units, because I feel like I'm comfortable and I know I can pull these limited units pretty easily. But then I look at these vision cards and I get so used to pulling vision cards for 2k paid or pulling them for 10k paid, and then I look at Chaos Odin and I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, like that's something nobody's expecting and it's just going to hammer them. Anyway, this video might have been a little rambly. Sorry guys if it was. I just wanted to kind of throw this idea out there, put my thoughts behind it, because I think there's a lot of people who, you know, when I saw that, when I had commented in my news video that it was only really limited units coming out now, some people actually commented that they were going to quit the game. And I don't think just because there's limited units coming, or specifically like Crystal Fest units coming, that you should quit the game. I think it just requires a different style or a different approach to the game. You know, I think, you know, as much as I give Cabbage a hard time, this may be one of those situations where taking Cabbage's Zen approach may be the right way to look at the game right now. So thank you so much for watching, you guys. As always, if you want to support me, you can use my affiliate link, dig.gs/coins or dig.gs/offer, and have a great rest of your day.